Hi, it's David Filippo, the left-handed right winger again, and I'm just going to continue on with my series. We're getting into numbers 10 through 7 of the best presidents, and we'll start with Zachary Taylor. We did mention before a little about Millard Fillmore, and this sort of ties in that because, uh, and it's been a little while, so we'll touch on it again. Taylor vehemently opposed the Compromise of 1850, which was said it was set up to kind of make some give and take over the issue of slavery. No side really ever liked it, and Taylor was vehemently opposed to it. He didn't think it was a good solution. And admittedly, I really praise the fact that he was opposed, uh, pro slavery, but opposed to secession. And he was willing to give up slavery for the sake of preserving the Union. To me, I always feel like that's a great turn to leave someone. That's someone to see, find the greater good in what they're doing that's wrong. I know it doesn't sound great, but it's in the theory, it's pretty good. And I was impressed by the fact, like, one of the things he said, particularly was his daughter was married to the then Senator Jefferson Davis. And he said pretty much that if anybody secedes from the Union, I will hang them. And I'll start with my own son-in-law, which was, like I said, Jefferson Davis, who would later be the president of the Confederacy during the Civil War. So it's very interesting of that, and it's too bad he started as he was inaugurated in 1849. He died in 1850, essentially July 4th. We were celebrating the cornerstone being laid at the Washington Monument, and there's a long going back to about the water being horrible in D.C. Like, people getting deathly ill. You don't want to drink the water. You don't want to wash fruits in it. Well, there was a bit of a celebration, 4th of July, and Taylor was eating some cherries and some milk and became really deathly ill, and essentially food poisoning killed him. Some wondered if he was poisoned, although they've done some tests more recently to show that it's not likely. The arsenic levels weren't high enough. They're talking back in 1990. So, yeah, he probably wasn't assassinated, but it made a lot of people wonder for a long time if it was some sort of conspiracy, because once he died, Willard Fillmore, who became president, quickly passed that Compromise of 1850, which he even told him that he would vote against it, that he would vote for it, even though Taylor was against it. He didn't. He was against the president. He was openly telling him that. So that's that, and then we move on to and I particularly just admire the fact that he's slave owner, but opposing secession and willing to give up the wrong of his ways for the betterment of the country. That's good. Then we go to Chester Alan Arthur, which I did briefly mention when I talked about James Garfield in the last video, because again, it's not the idea of the turning of ways, because he was a big proponent of the spoils system, with Roscoe Conklin, and mainly the Garfield assassin Charles Guiteau said, "I'm a stalwart." And Arthur is president, so he kind of implicated him. So, and even though he was not involved in any way, it kind of made him turn a new leaf and say, "You know what? This is done. I'm not going to have this system here. I'm only going to elect people. I'm going to only appoint people based upon their merits, not based upon who they know in government." It totally turned everything himself around. Upset a lot of people, including Roscoe Conkling, who was already upset with Garfield anyway. And also, the economy was pretty good under Arthur. There was a brief depression, but he got us out of it. And he reduced the government spending, and he paid back a lot of the debt. So it was, I think he deserves a lot of credit for what it's worth. Turning a new leaf and keeping the country in good shape. It's really impressive. Big one, Ulysses Grant. Now, historically, Ulysses Grant is usually rated very, very low, and that's because of there are a lot of scandals happening around him that he was involved in, like the famous whiskey ring, teapot, the Mobilier scandal, and they said he was a lot of these. He was, we keep talking about the spoils system. He was indirectly part of this. He had a lot of friends, a lot of people he respected. He decided to give them government jobs. And his fault being he was too trusting. He let a lot of people that he thought he could trust into these roles, and they just sabotaged the roles they had and stole a lot of money from the government. He didn't know about it. Grant did not know a thing about it. Didn't know these people were doing it until it was too late. But I think despite that, the big things he accomplished, I think can be forgiven that. It was, despite the panic of 1873, a small depression, he got us in and out of it. The economy was in pretty good shape. It's known as the Gilded Age for a reason. And we kept paying down the debt. And he really did well. And the big thing that I think blows everything out of the water is that he declared war on the Ku Klux Klan and wiped them out. And it's in a time because towards the end of his presidency, it became more of a debate on whether or not the government should be out there with the military protecting the newly freed slaves, which is unfortunate. I don't think we should have ever left, and it became more of a debate under Hayes, which I mentioned in another video why I'm not crazy about Hayes. But Grant really was vehemently opposed to the Ku Klux Klan, and he stood up against them, and he defeated them. And they never came back, at least until 1915, when they reorganized, for different reasons. But he destroyed them; they were gone. Which I thought I'm still very impressed by. I think that was a really good move. It's kind of much like George Bush's stand on terrorism. Grant went against these terrorists, and yeah. And Grant did a great job in that area. Like I'd say the big thing being that he took on the Ku Klux Klan and defeated them, which I think was a very important thing to do, and I give him a lot of credit for it. The next up would be Theodore Roosevelt, who's probably the seventh best president of all time. I know that a lot more of my more hardcore conservative friends don't like him because it ties to progressivism, but I still believe that there's some. The government should be much more centralized. It should be a give and take battle against oligarchy versus anarchy. Many of my more conservative views more towards the anarchy side. I believe it should be somewhere down the middle where we're kind of giving and taking a little bit, because there needs to be some balance. Because the whole reason why we have the government is if there's no government at all, there's really no freedom. Because you're going to be constantly protecting your property all the time. You're never going to leave your house. So you need some give and take on that. But there were a lot of things that Theodore Roosevelt woke us up to. I mean, the labor issues of the time. There's some things that he brought up that kind of are good to protect the worker. Even though I will say, again, and this is where I understand it, I think it's kind of abused over the years. I think it would be great if it was scaled back. But be great if it was scaled back, but it was abused essentially. And it's may have gone too far. But it was at the time a good wake up call. I think a good start. I think the mistake was that we didn't reelect Theodore Roosevelt in 1912. I think his loss is why we saw the expansion of progressivism in the negative way it is today, because we let the whole kind of Woodrow Wilson version take over, and just kind of forget and walked away from the Theodore Roosevelt version, which was better. Also, too, the whole meatpacking industry and other food regulators was good to bring up because there were a lot of problems in the way it was packed, and a lot of just a lot of abuse that I'm glad we're able to stop now. And also same with how the economy was in good shape. So I think Theodore Roosevelt deserves a lot of credit for what it was worth, at least at the time. I might as well jump in and it be a little faster than I thought. Number 6 is Ronald Reagan. I know some people think I'm a lot higher, but there's some people I think are a little bit better, even though because we're really getting to the top. I mean, my big thing with Reagan, I think he was the perfect time, perfect balance. I mean, he said it best. I mean, when he was inaugurated, he said the solution, government is not the solution. Government is the problem. And I think it speaks to exactly what I think the problem is, because we get the government way too involved. Now, it's funny I put him right after Roosevelt because I think he realized that there's something going too far in the wrong direction, and he brought Taylor back. I mean, the economy was in good shape. I don't like that he inflated the budget as much as he did. He probably inflated more, but it was more the problem because the Democrats didn't want to reduce any of the spending, in the areas that he wanted to. He lowered taxes, but we didn't have a lot of way to pay it, so it just went up and up and up. But I mean, you can't beat the 80s. Economy was soaring, interest rates were high. We were semi-peaceful. I mean, we had some military engagements, but we got in and out of. Of course, it was a sad Challenger explosion, but it was a great era, and Reagan brought us through it. And it's very hard to say that people left the 80s unhappy. Very, very few. I mean, if you were living then, working then, you made out pretty well. I mean, I think that's part why, too. George Herbert Walker Bush, who I mentioned in the video, was able to win election after and follow it because we were on a good track and he set up a good course for us going into the 90s. And arguably, I still stand by that. I think Bill Clinton took a lot of credit for the successes of Ronald Reagan because, again, Bill Clinton didn't do much of anything, spent a lot of time with his interns. So Ronald Reagan really set up a great path for him. Unfortunately, for him to take credit, but we had a really good run under Reagan. Yeah, can't beat it. Great economy, great foreign policy. And in a way, to try to compare him to Reagan, I guess in some ways Reagan has the class and the charm that I think Donald Trump lacks in some ways. I don't think a lot of the accusations and attacks on Trump you really couldn't throw on Reagan. I think Reagan is upright, clean guy. There's really not much you can throw at him that would stick as far as a personality standpoint. So it's good. And I think we'll spare it there. We'll go on. We'll finish up with the top five. Because we're really at the end of it here. So this ended up being a little longer than I thought I was going to do 7, but I made it 6. So anyway, thanks. Bye.